This is the Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo's latest console that has now been out for over 1 year, and a lot can change in a year. So today, I'm going to share what my past year with the Switch 2 has been like. Go over the good, the bad, the games, and whether or not you should buy one for yourself. First, let's go back to June 5th, 2025, the day the Switch 2 launched. I picked it up from the Best Buy launch event after screaming like Mr. Beast.
We are here at the Best Buy for the Switch 2 launch event.
But the important part is what happened after I came home with the Switch 2. This is when I started to use it. When I held the Switch 2 for the first time, I was like, yeah, this is an upgrade. The console felt way more premium than the original Switch. The Joy-Con thumbsticks weren't grindy like the Switch 1s. I don't know how to word it, but if you have a Switch 1, I think you know what I'm talking about. The bigger size made the console more comfortable to hold, and you can finally hold a single Joy-Con for Mario Kart and actually win. Okay, it's still not optimal, but it's much better. And then there's the screen. Man, that screen is something serious. The Switch 2 has a 7.9-inch 1080p display, and the games look great on it. Some games already look nice on the Switch 1's 720p display. So think of that, but 1.5 times better, I guess. The display is also 120 Hz, which you can see when you play Guess the Frame Rate in Switch 2 Welcome Tour. In a whole year, I am yet to play a game that supports 120 FPS, but they exist, I think. And speaking of games, let's talk about them, as I have some nice and not so nice things to share. When the Switch 2 first launched, I'ma be honest, that game selection was looking weak. There really wasn't a game I was losing my mind over. Mario Kart World looked cool, I guess, but it wasn't anything special. Even games like Donkey Kong Bonanza that were announced for later didn't excite me that much. Back in 2017, when the original Switch came out, I needed to play Splatoon 2. That game was literally the reason I bought a Switch. But with the Switch 2, it just felt like I was buying it because it was new, which is a terrible reason to buy something, by the way. But as a Nintendo YouTuber, I kind of had to. I know that's going to annoy some people, but I'm just being honest. That said, over time, 1 year to be specific, that started to change. The Switch 2 finally started getting games that actually made me excited to turn the console on. Donkey Kong Bonanza ended up being way better than I expected. I'm also a Mario Tennis fan, so I've been loving Mario Tennis Fever, besides them removing zone speed. And I just recently beat Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, which was super fun, even though it's missing the most important character. And I somehow have 55 hours in Mario Kart World, which is a lot for a game I supposedly don't like. So if you were holding out on the Switch 2 because of its weak game selection, 1 year later, I'd definitely say it's better now. And even if there's still no Switch 2 games that interest you, games that performed poorly on the Switch, Minecraft, Pokemon Violet, run great on the Switch 2 at a solid 60 FPS. But there is one problem.
The game prices.
Now look, Mario Kart World for $80 was crazy. I will never change my opinion on that. And even spending $70 on some games is painful. But Nintendo recently has been selling games for $60. Some people think it's because the sales weren't doing great, which if that's true, thank you to everyone who said they weren't going to buy the games and actually didn't buy them. So with good games out now and games maybe staying at $60 or $70, the game situation has definitely improved. But moving away from the games, there's one thing about the Switch 2 that I can't stand: handheld mode. Now don't get me wrong, gaming in handheld mode is great. The bigger screen is awesome, HDR is probably cool, and the Joy-Cons are much better. But the problem comes down to battery life. Someone on Reddit perfectly described this. It feels like they added all the sick upgrades to the Switch 2, the new screen, 120 Hz refresh rate, but kept the battery the same size, which obviously means it would die faster than the original Switch. Like guys, my Switch is at low battery as I'm explaining this. But don't worry, because I have this thing to keep it charged while I play. This is the Belkin charging grip, a grip designed for the Switch 2 that comes with a magnetic battery bank to charge the console while in use. It even has a little screen that shows what percent it's at. What's nice about this grip is that the Joy-Cons aren't attached to the base, so you can easily detach them. And the premium rubber on the back makes this grip super durable and makes the console much more comfortable to hold during long gaming sessions. Now, I'm not the type to game for 5 hours straight, but sometimes the Switch 2 can't even guarantee 2 hours of battery life. So having this comfortable grip that also charges the console console has been super helpful. So thank you to Belkin for sponsoring this video, and if you want to get one of these for yourself, you might as well get a travel bag too. This bag is meant for traveling with the Switch 2, and it even has a pouch to carry your games. I don't leave the house with my Switch that much, but when I do, it's nice to know that it's protected. I've also been using this as an everyday travel bag, as it has a decent amount of space. I have the black one, but you can also get the grip and travel bag in lilac or olive. Links to the Belkin charging grip and travel bag will be linked in the pinned comment and the description, so make sure to check them out. The good thing about the Switch 2 having poor battery life is that I mainly game in docked mode anyway. And docked mode after a year has changed my perspective of the original Switch. The Switch 2 dock can output games up to 4K resolution, and as someone who plays PC games in 1080p, I wasn't too concerned about needing to game in 4K. That said, my second monitor is 4K resolution, so I decided I would try out 1440p Switch gaming. I've heard PC gamers say once you go to 1440p, you can't go back to 1080p, and they were so right. Switch 2 games look so sharp at 1440p, and I got so used to it that when I docked my Switch 1 for a Mario Kart modding video, I could easily see how much worse it looked in 1080p. So if you have a 1440p or 4K monitor lying around, you gotta see how nice Switch 2 games look at that higher resolution. So I've talked about what getting the Switch 2 on release was like. The games, the handheld experience, and the docked experience. But after using this console for a year, the biggest change is that the Switch 2 just doesn't feel new anymore. With the Switch 1, for at least 3 years, I felt like, yo, this is the brand new console. I need to get all the new games. But with the Switch 2, it's a nice console to have, but I don't have any of that hype that I did with the original. I think that happens with all sequels though. The Switch was revolutionary, and the Switch 2 is just the upgraded version of it. And you know what? That works for me. The Switch 2 has a better screen, new games, is more powerful, and in my opinion, looks a lot nicer. And that's exactly what Nintendo was going for, an upgraded version of their best-selling console. So after using the Switch 2 for a year, do I actually think you should buy one? Well, before I tell you if the Nintendo Switch 2 is worth buying, I need to beat the Nintendo Glazer allegations. So welcome to We Hate the Switch 2. And in today's episode, I'm gonna list some things wrong with this console. First up, the home menu. There was nothing wrong with the Switch 1's home menu, so Nintendo decided to change absolutely nothing for the Switch 2's. No themes, no music, and no customization. We really need homebrew on this thing. Number 2, the battery life. As I mentioned earlier, the battery life on this is very bad, only lasting for 2 to 6.5 hours. Here's the thing though, 6.5 hours is great, but with a gap that big, you know it's only going to lean on the lower side unless you're playing, I don't know, an NES game. Number 3, game chat. I bought the $60 camera to test it. It worked, and then I went back to Discord. Number 4, no OLED screen. The LCD screen looks great, but we all know what's coming. Nintendo will sell the same console 4 years later, but with an OLED screen. And I will have no choice, we will have no choice but to buy it. And finally, the eShop. Yes, it runs faster, I'll give them that, but everything else is still cooked. The eShop is filled with AI games, weird mobile ports, and these types of games. So if you go to the eShop looking for cool third-party games you haven't heard of, you'll get that, just not what you want. And that's it for today's episode of We Hate the Switch 2. I'll catch you next time. I'm sorry, Switch 2. I didn't mean most of what I said. Okay, I meant most of it, but still, I love you. So yeah, I've said a lot of great things about the Switch 2, but it definitely isn't perfect. But here's my final verdict. Well, because the Switch 2 is just an upgraded version of the Switch 1, it all comes down to if you like the Switch. If you do like it, then I think you should definitely get the Switch 2. You'll be able to play all your current games with better performance and play new games. But if you don't like the Switch not because of its bad performance, then don't buy this expecting it to be any better. I think I should also mention, the price will be going up by $50 in September, and the Steam Deck is super expensive now. So make up your mind quick. I hope you enjoyed me talking about my experience with the Nintendo Switch 2. And if you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Bye.